Let's talk about how to let go of useless worries. Now, most worries are useless because they don't actually help to prevent anything bad from happening. And things we worry about usually don't end up happening. And yet we can just keep worrying. Our worry mind can just shift from one thing to the next, and once one worry is resolved, then it's kind of on to the next thing. It can really be exhausting and generate a lot of stress. So I want us to think about worry as a response that's intended to manage our anxiety in some way about something that we're concerned about. So let's say we're worried about getting sick, right? And so we don't know if we're going to get sick. There's some uncertainty around that. And so worry comes in, and it's really a problem of trying to control that outcome. Now, obviously, we can't entirely control whether or not we get sick, but we don't want to live in that kind of tension with not knowing what's going to happen. And so the mind can just continue to work on that problem, trying to solve it as if we can solve that problem mentally. So worry is really an effort at mental control, trying to just think through and puzzle through and think ahead enough that we can guarantee that things are going to turn out all right. The problem, of course, is that we don't have that type of control, and we end up taking on really an unrealistic sense of responsibility. And that's a really stressful place to live, with this belief, this kind of underlying assumption that it's up to me. I have to make sure that I don't get sick. But we get to the end of everything we can think through and plan through and try to prevent, and the mind knows on some baseline level that ultimately we don't have that type of control. But we can end up just doubling down on that worry response and just kind of worrying through everything again. So the way out of this is to start to pull apart those things that we do control and the things that we don't control. So it can help to actually write these down, to see things literally in black and white. So just take a pen and paper and write down, these are things that are actually under my control, and these things are outside of my control. You might be surprised, like I often am, how many things fall in the don't control column. So with getting sick, for example, things we can control might include, to some extent, our exposure, although you can never be sure if you're going to be around someone who's sick or not. Washing our hands, trying to eat nutritiously and get adequate rest. To some extent, those things are in our control, but a lot of things aren't. Again, these kinds of incidental exposures. Maybe you're taking a car trip with someone, and then they tell you along the way, oh yeah, my child is sick, and then suddenly you've been exposed potentially, and you hadn't planned on it. Then once you've identified what's actually under your control, focus there. Focus your attention on the things that actually lie within your power. And the rest, as often as you find yourself focusing on things that are outside of your control, just mark that to yourself. Oh yeah, that's not something that I ultimately have control over. And so it's not my responsibility. Now, this does involve a good amount of trust. There's a kind of letting go of outcomes that aren't ours to control. Now, trust doesn't necessarily mean trusting that everything's going to be fine. Things will probably be okay, but there will be problems. As you know, there will be times that things go wrong. So this really is a more fundamental sense of trust, of trusting that our life kind of has a life of its own, that not everything is up to us. And maybe at times we can find rest in that knowledge. We don't constantly have to be steering the ship. So try this out. Let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching.